Hey, this is John from All the Way to 11, and today's video is on this little blue card right here. And what this little blue card is an off-base pass for a Corporal Lawrence K. Bauer, who is stationed at Davis Monthan Field. Now you might be wondering, why am I doing a video on this base pass card? Well, I acquired this base pass card in a box of stuff that I bought from someone off of Craigslist like a long time ago, like 8 years ago. And it had a bunch of like little knick-knack stuff. It looked like something that they'd bought at an auction, and then this was the stuff they didn't want. Subsequently, the box just ended up in my basement, so, you know, it's okay. Anyway, the other day I kind of was like, I'm going to go through this. And I looked at it, and I saw this card inside there. And honestly, it wasn't what's on this side that made me curious or want to do a video on it. It's actually what's on the back side. So let me go ahead and flip it over, and I'll show you what it says on the back side. Let me zoom in here so you can maybe read that a little better. Now, what it says on the top, if you can't read it, is prophylactic stations in Tucson. And the reason why this made me want to do a video is because I kind of found it humorous. Whenever I hear the word prophylactic, I think about the Blues Brothers, because I think that's the first time I ever heard the use of that word was when Jake Blues was getting out of prison and they're going through his effects. And if you haven't seen that movie, check it out. It's Blues Brothers. It's a good movie. Anyway, that kind of sparked my interest. But then I started thinking, well, I'm not sure what period this card is from, this base pass is from, but it actually addresses a very real military problem that has existed with militaries for as long as probably militaries have existed, which is sexually transmitted diseases, or STDs, and the need to prevent soldiers from getting them and spreading them. And the reason for this being is you obviously don't want your soldiers to be lost as casualties because they contracted a venereal disease. Anyway, that's what kind of interested me in this, because I wasn't sure what the era on this card would be. I figured it was probably somewhere from the 40s to maybe the early 60s, but not knowing totally for sure just from what it said on it. So I thought, one, is kind of an interesting reflection of the realities of military command, that they realize that their soldiers are going to be engaging in certain activities, and it is better to prevent them from catching a disease than to be prudes about it. So they provide aid for the soldiers in that way. And I also just found it really interesting. It is printed on the back of a base pass. So anyway, in trying to determine when exactly this base pass was issued, I actually found out a lot of interesting history associated with it that I never would have expected. I mean, I thought this was just a little blue base pass card. Let's go into what I first tried to look up to try to find something out about this. And it's the Davis Monthan Field, which the Davis Monthan Airfield was originally commissioned. Well, it was originally the largest airfield, municipal airfield in the country at the time that it was commissioned. And in 1927, it was designated. It was you know, it'd be good sometimes if I could read my notes better. Dedicated. Oh my God, it was dedicated by Charles Lindbergh of Flying Across the Atlantic fame. Excuse my faux pas there. But anyways, it is dedicated in 1927 by Charles Lindbergh. It is named after two World War I fighter pilots that were native to Tucson, who died in the early 1920s. Anyway, it began as a municipal airport, but then it switched to a municipal military airport. And then, so let me see here, and beginning in 1940, it became the Tucson Army Airfield and was no longer a municipal airport. And then 4 days before Pearl Harbor, it became the Davis Monthan Army Airfield on December 3rd, 1941. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And then trying to figure that out and seeing all that, it's like, okay, gives me an idea. And I thought, well, I'm going to look up the 233rd Squadron and see what comes up for that. And when I looked that up, I found out that prior to 1944, the 233rd was known as the 39th Combat Training Battalion, or Squadron. And it was stationed in Tucson at Davis Monthan Airfield. Post March 1944, it became known as the 233rd. Combat Crew Training very heavy. So they were doing heavy bomber training. And it's interesting because that is what took place at the Davis Monthan Airfield, was heavy bomber training, which, if you know anything about World War II and the U.S. involvement in World War II, heavy bombing was an important part of our strategy overall. So it's really a much more important base than I ever really realized that this card would be. And also that dates this at least to 1944, that it can't be from before March 1944. So now I know a beginning date. I know it is 1944. And then kind of looking at the rest of the card, what else can I see here? And I see it says Air Corps. Now, in 1947, there was legislation that abolished the Air Corps and replaced it with the Department of the Air Force. So theoretically, this shouldn't say Air Corps past 1947. So that really gives me a good 3-year window that this is probably from 1944 to 1947. It was issued at some point in there, either during World War II or just after World War II. And that all was really interesting. And not just that, there's more on this Davis Monthan Field, which you'll recognize it. Well, I'm sure you probably would recognize it if you watched some different movies that have it, or there are many different movies, maybe even some TV shows. The one that comes to mind for me is Harley Davidson, the Marlboro Man, and the closing kind of shootout in that movie. And the reason why that is because it is also the government boneyard for excess planes. So anything that's an excess government aircraft or military aircraft goes there and gets mothballed. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I just really thought, you know, this goes to show how some little blue card that I just had sitting in a box somewhere that I thought I was going to make a kind of funny, jokey video about actually has this amazing little history. Now, not that it's ever going to be worth anything, but just the knowledge of it is kind of cool. You know, whether this was during World War II or post-World War II, knowing what this squadron was doing and where they were doing it and why they were doing it, to me is pretty cool. Now, I couldn't really find anything about the Corporal Bauer or Carson Durbin, the major who was in charge of the base, or at least to approve this pass. And so I'm not sure who those guys are. I didn't see anything. If you know anything about that, go ahead and comment below. Hell, if you know anything more that could date this more precisely, comment below. Let me know, because I don't know for sure. I couldn't find any definitive images to tell me what period this would be from. I saw some earlier ones, I saw some later ones, but I never found one that would really fall right into this category. And I don't know if this was an individual thing per base, or if this was, which I would imagine it's not. I'd imagine this was centralized because it has the typed in portion here. So it probably came from the government. So any more information that people have on it, I'd be glad to find out. And not just that, there is a ton more information out there about the Davis Monthan Airfield and the 233rd Squadron. So if you want to find out more about that, go looking, because it is there. I could have probably done an hour video just on the airfield. Not that that'd be that interesting. I think it'd actually be kind of boring and it wouldn't really fit my format, but you know, maybe. You never know. Maybe in the future I will do some extensive video on that. I think that I would have to have a lot of time or a lot of requests. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I know this isn't quite a normal gun video or something of that nature, but I thought it was an interesting piece of history. I thought it was interesting how it could just be sitting somewhere and no one would even know the history of this thing. They would just look at it as a little blue piece of paper. Who cares? Let's just toss it in the trash. And its intrinsic value is probably pretty small, pretty narrow. But it's an interesting piece of history that you can learn more about the world around you. And in this case, you know, that heavy bomber training was very important to us during World War II. And it had a significant effect on our capabilities and our ability to destroy the enemy in the field. So this little blue card is attached somewhat to a very important training and a very important time in American and world history. And like I said, it was just sitting in a box. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and give it a like. If you watched some of my other videos and you enjoy those too, I'd really appreciate if you subscribed. Thanks for listening to me ramble about our blue card here, and have a great day. Thanks.